Hello, so I thought I would chat to you about meditation. I've been meditating kind of on and off for about 5 years now. I first became aware of meditation when I was on my degree at university when I was studying psychology, because there's a lot of kind of scientific psychological studies about meditation, and have kind of been on kind of like Buddhist monks and kind of investigating the benefits of meditation and how it changes the brain, because meditation has been found to kind of change your brain waves, your brain state. I was trying to say them both at the same time, that's why that came out like that. And it changes it to kind of like long waves, like gamma waves, rather than your alpha or your beta. And it's been found to kind of be relaxing, and other benefits as well. So it's been long documented that the meditation is good for you, but it's not really been kind of like a Western thing until very recently. And so I kind of always viewed it as being quite new age and quite like not usual to do. Like when anybody ever said that they used to meditate, I'd think, oh, that's a bit strange. But actually, like, it's so good for you. So my first experience of it was when I was volunteering at a charity called Mind, I feel like, mental health, because I was interested in getting into that. So it was in between studying for my degree, I think. Was it afterwards? Might have been after, I can't remember. I think it was afterwards, actually, when I'd just finished. And we were kind of doing like, it was like a day centre, so we were doing kind of like a group kind of activity. And they put a tape on, and the tape was like a meditation tape, and it was a guided meditation. And I like sat and did it with them, and I thought that I'd fallen asleep whilst I was doing it, and that the tape had woken me back up again. I found it really relaxing, like really enjoyable to do. But what I didn't realise was that actually I wasn't asleep. I'd been put into kind of like a meditative state, which I'll get into in a bit later, because that's kind of what happens to me quite regularly now. But that was kind of my first experience, and I kind of, liked it and enjoyed it, and I didn't really think much of it until I'd got a job later on, and they were offering kind of like free yoga classes. So I'd gone along to this yoga class, and it was, by a guy that was like a proper yogi. And at the end of it, he did like a meditation with like symbols and things. And again, it was really relaxing. I did actually think I'd fallen asleep during that one, because I had like a flashback of not flashback, but it kind of like felt like a flashback of like a car crash, like as a dream. So obviously I can't have been awake, can't have even been in a meditative state, because you wouldn't have kind of like seen that. But again, I was really, really relaxed, really enjoyed it. And so fast forward a couple of years, and my friend introduced me to the Meetup app, and I was kind of scrolling through, and I saw a class for meditation, and I was kind of like, actually, I would really like to kind of go to that and experience that, because lots of people are saying that meditation is really good for you. I know about the kind of brain studies. Why am I not doing it? So I decided to go along to it. It wasn't what I was expecting, because I was expecting, like, at the end of the yoga class, we were kind of sat on mats. I was expecting it to be like that, but actually it was just sitting in a circle on chairs, and it was kind of a mixture. So it was kind of one of them was like a guided meditation where like a story's read out, which puts you into kind of like a meditative state, and the other one was, I think it must have been like a body scan, but I can't quite remember. So there's like different types of meditation that you can do. And it was always really good for me. So I would always turn up like really stressed, really kind of like, in a really kind of like tight kind of experience. So it's like hard to explain like what the body feels like when it's stressed, but if you've been stressed, it's not nice. But at the time, it was a normal kind of body state for me. I didn't realise that was a stress body state. It was only when I started to meditate more years later that I realised how stressed that I was, and how good that meditation was for me in terms of like relaxing my body and my mind. So it was, really good. And I didn't carry on going to it because like I'd gone to it for quite a while back, and then I moved house, so I was like away from it, so I didn't kind of go. And then I'm just trying to think actually what I did after that. I tried kind of like the Headspace app, but it wasn't as good as being in person. And then I went to classes in Manchester because I moved to Manchester. And I had one experience actually, which was where they were kind of doing kind of movements around me and like turning like at the back of me. And I had there's a yoga, is it no yoga meditation called Kunalindli or something like that, and it's about your chakras. And I've got a blockage in my knowledge chakra, so that basically, because, which I know about already anyway, because whether you believe in this stuff or not, it kind of makes sense. I'm very intellectual about things, so I don't access my feelings as much, and so therefore I have a blockage with that. And it was weird because they said that that was where my blockage was, and I was like, how do they know that when they don't know me as a person? So that was interesting. But anyway, when they kind of did all this stuff, I felt it releasing, and I could feel like things coming out of my head, which sounds really weird, but like you can feel like air coming out of your head, and it might all be like nonsense, but I could feel it, and I'd never felt like that before these people started doing the tying above me and stuff like that. So I was like, that was different. So regardless of whether it's made up or whatever, it worked at changing my body state. So that was interesting. And then I had been to other classes and meditated, and then I'd started to go to one class, which was recently, and they would put me into a meditative state. This is when I realised what meditative states were, and then I would come back out of them. But this one time I came out of it a bit too soon, and I heard what she was saying, and she was bringing everybody else out of it, and I was like, oh my god, like normally I'm under when she's saying all this. And it was a guided meditation. It was kind of like the one where you go down the steps, and I was going down the steps into my unconscious. Very strange. But what I noticed was the things that she was saying were kind of like self-affirmations. They were kind of like, saying like how strong you were, how independent you were, and not independent, but I'm just picking up random words because obviously I can't remember what she said because I was in this state. But she was kind of like saying all kind of like good stuff. And after I'd been to that a couple of times, I felt noticeably better about myself because I'd gone through quite an emotional time with stress and things like that, and that helped to make me better. And so I was kind of like, wow, like I didn't even realise that was happening, but she was tapping into my unconscious and putting things in much the same way that Devon Brown does. Everyone says that meditation and whatever is kind of made up and it's not real, but actually it is accessing some unconscious mind stuff. Like that does happen. And so meditation for me has always been really kind of good at relaxing me and making my body more relaxed. And what it's also really good at is it's to kind of explain like how it feels. I mean, when you first start meditating, a lot of people kind of struggle with it because they get really stressed because they think when they're sat there, they're thinking I should be doing something, because they're always really busy people, and they like to be, doing stuff. They can't just sit and not do anything. And I always think that sitting and not doing anything is really kind of useful for your mind, because a lot of stuff comes into your mind at first. And well, for most people, I'm saying this doesn't really happen to me. Like my like a lot of people say that their thoughts are always happening in their mind, but my mind's quite quiet. I don't really hear much going on in my mind. I don't know if that's because I've been meditating for years, or if that's just because basically when you meditate for years, that's what happens. Your mind gets quiet and there's nothing going on in there, which is really nice. But to be honest, I don't feel like I was ever really that busy anyway, because I talk out loud to myself a lot. So it's not like it's happening in my mind, because I usually verbalise it. So I think maybe it's years of speaking out loud that's meant that my mind's a bit quieter. I don't know. Or maybe it's just that I'm not in touch with some of my thoughts, and that I might not be able to hear them, but they're still there. I don't know. But anyway, some people find it really, really difficult because they can't like focus on the breath, and their mind kind of wanders. And you've got to kind of be like kind to yourself and kind of relaxed about it, and kind of just be like, your mind will wander. It's quite normal that even my mind wanders, and I find myself I tend to kind of thinking images, so I'll like start picturing something, and then I'll be like, oh, I should be picturing that, and I bring myself, like, it's almost like you bring yourself back to the center, and you start like focusing again on the breath, or how the breath feels against your nostrils, or how it feels as it's going like through your body, and you kind of focus on that, and it's just kind of like bringing it back. And I mean, the more you do that, the easier it becomes to kind of keep your mind just in one place, but it does take practice. It doesn't happen straight away, and I can guarantee you that it does with time get easier, and you don't get as distracted or whatever. I mean, as I said, this is a bit difficult for me to explain, because when I've got quite a laser attention. If I focus on something, it's quite easy for me to stick to it, like it always has been. It's one of my strengths. So in terms of meditation, it was a bit easier, I think, for me than what it might have been for, people starting out, because people get really, really frustrated, and I never got that, I never really understood that. But I get that's probably why, because maybe they find it more difficult to keep their attention. So yeah, the more you practice, the easier it becomes, because it, like, for me, starting to now, I've got a lot better at it as well. But it kind of like, it's weird, because you this is what happens to me. So when I'm kind of meditating, at first you kind of like focus on the breath or whatever, and then eventually you kind of like feel like you're almost like suspended in like midair, like as if like you're just kind of floating. It's funny, because I get images of a cave, and like rain outside the cave, and as if I'm like a monk dressed in like orange, like a Buddhist monk, and I'm just sat in the cave. So I get that kind of imagery quite a lot, but it kind of, I don't know, it feels like serene, and it feels kind of like your focus broadens, and you kind of see the bigger picture of things, and you almost feel, whenever this has happened to me before once when I wasn't meditating, when you go walking somewhere and you're on your own, and you look over like the distance, and you see a really nice view, and you just feel like your perspective just changes, and you just feel like the world is a big place, and that you're a small part of the world. That's what meditation makes you feel like, for a sustained amount of time. Because obviously when you look at a view, as soon as you look away, that it's gone. But like when you're on top of a mountain, you have that feeling. That's what meditation feels like. So it feels really good, and it can, you can be in that state for half an hour, while you're sat there. So, or an hour if you want. Like, you can be in it, as long as you want. It's a nice feeling. You don't feel like, like little things in life, like when, I don't know, when someone's been horrible to you, or when, something irritating's happened, or whatever. When you meditate, you realise that those things don't matter. Like, in a couple of years' time, you won't even think of those people or those situations, or you just won't even be bothered. And meditation kind of makes you recognise that, and brings you back to the bigger picture of life, rather than focusing on the minutiae, on the really tiny kind of unimportant things. So it gives you some real perspective, so it calms you down, it gives you perspective. It also makes you able to separate your thoughts from yourself, because you get in touch with who you are inside, rather than the thought and the intellectualization that you might do, and how you kind of try and logicize things. It's more like just an existence, like your very essence. You start to feel that and be more in touch with that, and you become more intuitive, because you're listening to that more than your thoughts. So you kind of separate those out, and when you do have like weird thoughts or reactions to things, you can be more kind to yourself and separate those out, and behave in a way that you actually want to intend to, rather than the reaction. Or if you get upset by something, you can recognise the reason you were upset, and then you're not upset anymore. Like, I don't really get upset very often. I've not cried for months, and things don't really bother me that much. Like, they do initially, but then as soon as I start to kind of like separate my mind from that, like those thoughts, I'm okay. So it helps with like emotional regulation a lot. And there's lots of different things that you can do to help the mindfulness as well, because meditation brings like mindfulness, and people always think of meditation as just sitting in like a lotus pose and thinking about the breath, but there can be lots of different things. You can meditate while walking. You can obviously meditate seated, you can meditate lying down. You know, some people prefer that, so you can get into kind of a deeper meditation with lying down. But the only problem is you end up falling asleep, and so it's not as beneficial. Like, it feels a lot better when you've meditated and kept awake the whole time than if you've like slept. You can meditate whilst you're eating. You can have movement meditation, like a bit like Tai Chi. And for me, like when I run, it feels similar to when I meditate. Not as deep, obviously, but the kind of feeling of peace and relaxation happens when I'm running, but only if I don't listen to music, only if it's like you're listening to, you know, everything that's around you. So meditation's like really, really good for you. There's, you know, research out there that says that it's good for you, and it has like so many benefits and just makes you feel so much better. I definitely have found the benefits of doing it regularly, and I always find as well that it's better to do it in person with someone's voice that's quite soothing. You have to find the right voice for you, because different people have different preferences for voices, but for me it's kind of like the voice that sounds like this, like that's really slow and calm, and I find it really soothing and really kind of relaxing. So I get a lot deeper in meditation when I'm in person with other people meditating as well. Although it can be quite distracting sometimes with other people, because when you hear them move, it breaks your concentration sometimes, and you come out of the meditation then have to go back in again. It's almost like you feel like you're surfing above the water, and then you go back under the water again. It's a bit weird. But having said that, I have just been listening to a mindful book, and the guy that does it has a voice that's nice, and when you put it on headphones, I have been finding I've been going deep into my meditation. I don't want to do like Headspace app or anything like that, or like YouTube mindful video things. They've never got me deep into meditation, but this book has. The only problem is it keeps banging like things, so you can hear like when he's moving, so it kind of like brings you out of the meditation too much. But so I think that if you get the right voice and you get the right recording, you could probably do it as well as in person. But it is quite good in person, particularly people who have been meditating for a long time themselves, because they know kind of like how to say it for it to be more beneficial. I've been going to like a Buddhist kind of run centre, and they kind of also talk like at the beginning about things and then do the meditation, and I find that really useful as well. And I've been to another place as well, a different group of Buddhists, that they kind of explain separation of the thoughts and stuff like that. So if you're not kind of aware of those things as well, that'd be quite useful to go to, have that kind of discussion of thoughts and experiences in the mind before you meditate, because it makes it easier. So I would definitely recommend trying it if you haven't already. And, you know, if you begin to do it and you find it frustrating, to keep at it and do it kind of like at least once a week, for, you know, about half an hour. You know, it doesn't even have to be long. Like, you can start off by doing just 10 minutes, but I would say that 10 minutes is not really long enough to get you into a deep meditation, to find it as restorative. Like, it's a lot better when it's like 30 minutes plus, and obviously you want to be comfortable, so I prefer to sit in a chair or to like sit up in bed, so your back's straight, so that you're less likely to fall asleep. And I always close my eyes as well. I don't believe these people that say you can meditate with your eyes open. I don't think you can, although I think you can stare at an object. That's another kind of type. So there's lots of different ways that you can try. So if one meditation doesn't work for you, you might want to try others, because it is really good, and it has helped me a lot with my mind and being in control of my mind, because I think there's a lot of people that go around being very unconscious, and it does definitely make you more self-aware and more conscious of what you're thinking and feeling and doing in the world.